So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here outside the Dhaha and thought to record a short Awada for the internet. So I thought they could start with just a little meditation, so I can lean forward a bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, wishing may all beings to my right be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond. In every dimension, may all beings to my right be happy and at ease. And we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side and our left hand side, wishing may all beings to my right and my left be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, our left hand side, and in front. May all beings to my right, my left, and in front be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, our left hand side, in front, behind, in all 4 directions. May all beings in all 4 directions be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, our left hand side, in front, behind, and above. May all beings in all 4 directions and above be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, our left hand side, in front, behind, above, below, all around in every direction, everywhere. May all beings all around in every direction, everywhere be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond. In every dimension, may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And before we finish meditating, can cultivate the perception of impermanence with regard to all phenomenon. All phenomenon, except for Nibbana, are subject to change. Whatever is compounded is subject to change. It's impermanent, it's suffering, and it's not myself. And can open our eyes and do a short Dhamma discussion, or short Owada for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So hope that everybody's having a great day wherever it might be. And today is the, they call Asalha Puja in Sri Lanka. It's the full moon day. That the day after this is the beginning of Vasa. And traditionally, Asalha Puja marks the Buddha's first sermon, kind of the full moon day, beginning of, which is right before the start of Vasa, is traditionally the time when people commemorate the Buddha's first sermon. And this first sermon was called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which means the kind of setting in motion of the wheel of Dhamma, as far as my Pali goes. And so this sutta was seen to be the beginning of Buddhism, and kind of or the beginning of the Buddha's kind of teaching career. And it was significant in a lot of different ways. For one, it set out the basic doctrine, what they call the elephant's footprint in Buddhism. And this kind of discourse teaches about the Four Noble Truths, and all the other Buddhist teachings are said to be able to fit into the Four Noble Truths. For another thing, it showed that not just the Buddha could attain to the noble paths and fruits, but it was possible for other people to attain to the noble paths and fruits as well. So this kind of discourse, he starts out by laying out what the causes, he starts out by laying out, that there's two extremes that one shouldn't follow. There's kind of sensual extremes, kind of extremes in sensual pleasure, which are ignoble and base. And then there's the extremes of self-mortification. And these kind of two extremes don't lead to unbinding. They don't lead to a state of permanent peace. In the Buddha's day, and even now, whether people know it or not, what people are generally searching for is happiness. And the underlying theory of happiness, at least when I was growing up in the modern West, was basically that if you could get as much stuff, as much external things as could satisfy you as possible, that was the best, most efficient way to get happiness. So when the Buddha was growing up, he grew up as a prince, and he had all these kind of extreme sensual pleasures. He's kind of said he's known he knew the extremes of sensual pleasures. He had like 3 houses, and his father was extremely rich, and these various things. And so he searched out for sensual pleasures. And it's said that maybe not just in this life, but previous lives as well, there's basically no type of external sensual pleasure that he didn't experience. And so having searched for that, he still didn't find a permanent form of happiness. And so he set out on this quest. He left home and shaved off his hair and beard despite his parents crying, and became a wandering samana. And he first went to 2 different teachers who taught him 2 different types of formless meditations. but he wasn't satisfied that those led to Nibbana. And so he left and took up this path of self-mortification, which is where basically people undertake these ascetic difficulties, denying themselves any type of, trying to deny oneself any type of external happiness or external sensual pleasure at all. Basically going almost without food and, maybe going without clothing, and he did a lot of extreme things to the point where it said he became so thin that when he went to touch his stomach, he would touch his backbone as well. And when he went to defecate, he would fall over on his face. And when he rubbed his limbs, his hair became so rotted that it fell out at the root. This was the kind of extreme of self-mortification. And can seem a little bit funny. Well, why would one, if one couldn't find happiness in sensual pleasures, why would one go to the extreme? And why would one think one could find it in suffering? But there's these kind of philosophical ideas that basically, if one doesn't attach to any sensual pleasures, like basically if one makes one's life quite a lot, suffering, and one restrains oneself from any type of pleasurable or pleasant feeling, then through that one can free the mind from suffering, kind of just through not indulging in these things. This may have been one of the ideas current in India at that time. But the Buddha found that both of these didn't lead to Nibbana, and so he abandoned his ascetic practices, and all of his 5 friends left him, and he took some solid food, and after taking that solid food, he sat down at the root of a tree. And before he decided to abandon his ascetic practices, he remembered a time when he was young, and he'd enter what they call the first jhana, which is a blissful state that doesn't depend on external sensual pleasures. He thought, could this be the way to the deathless? And the knowledge came, this is the way to the deathless. So then he made a vow that he would sit down and meditate, and he wouldn't get up until he attained Nibbana. In other words, he would have died at that spot if he hadn't attained Nibbana. But he did achieve his goal that night, kind of the night of his awakening. So then after this, he thought, who should I teach? And he went and found his former 5 ascetic friends and taught them this first sermon. So this idea of the middle path is still a kind of idea that's very relevant in life today. Because oftentimes one can think that just by following a particular principle, that one will be able to always get good results from that. We see this in kind of political discourse. We see this in economic discourse of if only we apply more free market, if only we apply more government regulation. When I was young, I used to study a little business, and in economics, there were times when people really took it to the extreme, the management of the economy through government stimulus and these kind of things, and big problems arose. And then there's been times when people took it to the extreme that we should just let everything be and let the free market reign. And also big problems arose. And so this is just a little external illustration, but in Buddhism the chief quality is this heedfulness, because there's no external principle aside from this heedfulness that one can just take and apply over and over and over again and always get good results. And this is what makes his path a skill. This is what makes the development of wholesome qualities a skill, because to every wholesome quality, it has a near enemy almost. Everyone except heedfulness, basically. And some might say mindfulness. But for example, if one is compassionate, that can be taken to an extreme. One can suffer a great deal from seeing another person in distress. One could suffer too much from stepping on ants. One could suffer too much from maybe giving away too many things that one shouldn't. So these things have an extreme, they have a near enemy. And this is why the Buddha's path, this middle path, is something which requires this heedfulness, this ability to balance. And so this is what he discovered, that there's this middle way between sensual indulgence and self-torture, and this is the way that leads to unbinding. This is the way that leads to the cessation of suffering. And he taught that this way had a path. This path is kind of noble eightfold path, which is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So the discourse goes on. It's a very kind of inspiring discourse, and at the end of the discourse, one of his disciples attains what they call the eye of the Dhamma, which is stream entry. And he says, Kondanya knows, and that's how Venerable Kondanya, he became the Buddha's first noble disciple, and he became Anya Kondanya, who knows. So what that goes to show, again, as important, is that it's not just the Buddha through his superhuman abilities, through his incredible abilities, who's able to discover the deathless, but other people who apply their minds to try to understand, to try to eliminate the fetters, they're also capable of doing the same thing. They're also capable of gaining the same state that the Buddha did. And so when Anya Kondanya gained this spotless eye of the Dhamma, a cry went up through all the Deva world, saying, the kind of the unsurpassed wheel of the Dhamma has been set in motion, and basically it said in the discourse that nobody can turn back this wheel of Dhamma. No Deva, Brahma, Mara, or anybody at all. So this is one of the amazing things about the Buddha's teaching, is that it's said that there will be a time when the Buddha's teaching disappears, when the Dhamma disappears, but that this Dhamma doesn't disappear all at once like the sinking of a ship. And that it basically doesn't disappear through an external threat like a war or something like this, wiping it out of existence. It disappears when corruptions arise within the practitioners of the Dhamma themselves. But at the same time, the Buddha says, so long as the bhikkhus, so long as practitioners in general, one can extrapolate, practice rightly, this world will never be free of arahants. This world will always have people who have attained the deathless in it. Because the principles through which the Buddha practiced, the principles through which he laid out in his first discourse, are things that are said to be timeless. They're things that are said to be always relevant. They're things that are visible here and now, things that are to be experienced by the wise. And they're things that one knows through one's practice. So this is what Anya Kondanya came to know. He became somebody who knew, somebody who was had stepped into a path where he became independent of others in the Buddhist teachings, where he became set for sure on the path to arahantship. And so long as people practice in line with the Buddhist teachings, then this path is always open to them. This path is something that's never closed. And it's in this way that the Buddha's teachings are said to be timeless. It's in this way that the Devas or Mara or Brahma cannot roll back the Buddha's teachings, because there's something that depends on a person's individual intentions. So long as a person cultivates their intentions rightly, no Deva, Brahma, Mara, or anybody in the world can destroy the effects of their intentions, can destroy the effects of their practice. And this is the amazing thing about the Buddhist teachings. One of them, I remember when I was very young, I really didn't like religions at all, and never thought that I would be a religious person, let alone, I guess, what you call like a full-time religious person. And one day, my mother gave me this book as a joke, and the book had in it the Four Noble Truths. And before I read them, there was a section in the book that said, "This is the central tenets of the Buddhist teachings." And before I was reading them, I thought, I'm going to argue with these, and they're going to be, this is my thinking, they're going to be full of holes, like the other religious doctrines I felt like I've read. So I remember going through them, and the first noble truth is basically the truth of suffering. It describes what suffering is. The second noble truth describes the cause of suffering, which is craving. And this book said attachment. The third noble truth describes the ending of suffering, which is the cessation of craving. In this book, again, it said, I think, the cessation of attachment. And the fourth noble truth is the path, which is this noble eightfold path that leads there. And so going through the first truth and the second, then the third, it's hard to remember exactly at what point, but somewhere within that possibly, or I think maybe by the end of the third possibly, I was a Buddhist. So So these truths are something that are relevant even in the modern day. Even today, in the 21st century, with all the technology, with all the phones, with all the computers, with all the cars, the truth of suffering is still true. And kind of birth is suffering, aging is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Not to get what one wants is suffering. In short, the 5 aggregates are suffering. And the cause of suffering is craving. We're kind of running here and there, searching for ever fresh delight. And the cessation of suffering is the cessation of this craving, when one is able to eliminate it. And the path to leading to the end of this cessation of craving is the Noble Eightfold Path. That's right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And whoever follows this path can find a deathless happiness. And that's a victory that nobody, no Brahma, no Mara, no Deva, or anybody at all can turn into defeat. So today on Asalha Puja, I pay homage, join with all the others who are paying homage to the Buddha, to the Blessed One, and to his setting in motion the wheel of the Dhamma, which is still rolling today. Okay, so leave that for reflection, and hope that everybody has a great day where it might be, and wishing all the blessings of Dhamma practice.